This podcast is not intended to and does not create a client-therapist relationship between the AllPro Mindset hosts, Jason Frabel or Dr. Aaron Sapio, and any other person. Although tips for incorporating mindfulness interventions into your daily life are offered, this podcast is not a group therapy session and is not intended to take the place of therapeutic intervention.
Hello, you are listening to Doc and Coach on AllPro Mindset, where we interview professionals, explore positive outlooks, and make connections to our own lives. We thank you for listening to us, and we hope that you're gaining something from these podcasts. You know, in a previous episode, we talked about intentional positivity, and I have a story to share about intentional positivity. Over the weekend, my husband's parents took my family and my husband's sister's family to Hershey Park. And my two daughters are 5 and 7, and my nephew and niece are also 5 and 7. So we were like, yay, Hershey Park. And then the potential of the morning started to kind of creep in on me, and I thought, oh, Hershey Park. This was the first time that we were going to a whole day park event without strollers. Now, so anyone who has kids who are around 5 and 7 years old know that that can be a potentially terrifying realization that we're going to have to go through the whole day. And what are the meltdowns going to look like today? So you have the idea of these fun rides, but then you have the idea of, oh my gosh, these kids are going to pull me in different directions. They're not going to want to go on the same rides. Then they're going to want me to buy them game money and stuff. And then it's going to be food. And then it's going to be they're tired and they're going to complain and they want me to carry them. So I thought, oh my God, all my fun ideas for the day just went all the way down. And I got washed over like a tidal wave of doom that this day was going to be awful. So I had to stop myself. It was a sunny morning. And I looked up and I said, today I will choose patience and positivity. And I said this out loud a couple of times to the point where, you know, my husband kind of laughed at me because he knows that I'm going through this, like, choosing positivity. And my brother-in-law, who's a little cynical, kind of laughed at me and was like, all right, we're starting that already? Like, here we go in the first bit of the day. But I kept saying it. I am choosing patience and positivity. And I will tell you that the whole weekend went so smooth. There were a couple of tears, but I was able to pull myself together. No, my kids were able to pull themselves together. We were able to calm everything down because as parents, or if you're a caretaker, a babysitter, or whatever you are, when kids start to act out, you react. You know, your body starts to get stressed out and then you react and everything blows up. But by choosing patience and positivity, we were all able to stay nice and calm, get over any humps really quickly and move on. And it was great. And I really think that by choosing that intentional positivity, it made everything go more smoothly. So, and I share this because this show is talking about making these choices. And even for me as the person who is helping facilitate this discussion, I'm learning every single week. You know, we're learning every day, every time we have an interaction with someone, we're learning, we're reinforcing ideas, we're practicing, because if you don't practice these ideas, they don't become part of your own mindset. You know, and so I think it's just kind of interesting to see how it's starting to shape even my family life just by being a part of this.
Yeah, Doc, that was a very, great story, one. And I think on some level, our listeners out there can all relate in some capacity or another to these experiences that we go through and live each and every day, in and out. And this idea of generating, positivity or kind of giving ourselves the opportunity to make choices in our lives and choices that somehow impact the quality of the life that we have. Mm-hmm. And, from week to week, we have an opportunity to get a very quick glimpse into the lives of those that we interview, and they share their insights and, just wisdom with us to say, okay, how can I take what they're telling me and incorporate it in some capacity into my own life and give myself that space and that opportunity to really start living a life of, flourishing and just with this sense of meaning and purpose and fulfillment, really. And, this evening's topic, we're going to move into lifelong learning. And I think that, it doesn't stop with books. It doesn't stop at the end of high school. It doesn't stop at the end of your bachelor's degree or your graduate degree or your doctorate, whatever it might be. It is a continual process. And this evening's guest, I had an opportunity, as no coincidence, to meet in a program which we had reflected on in an earlier episode called the Certification of Applied Positive Psychology. And what's unique about that is the guest and myself were both there out of a love of learning, this kind of lifelong learning. And within that program, it was identified that both of us, our number one strength was the love of learning. So I found that unique, and there was this connection generated between the two of us. And I believe I've referenced this before, but part of the development of this podcast, AllPro Mindset, was a result of a conversation that I had with this evening's guest, and particularly as it relates to love of learning and lifelong learning.
That's cool. Great. Yeah. And I was at school this week, and one of the students even asked me, we were just talking about future directions and what we wanted to do and what he wanted to do in getting through high school. And he said to me, he's like, you have a doctorate, so why do you work in a school? Because you can work in a school with a master's degree. You don't have to go on to get a doctorate. And that it sparked a whole conversation about lifelong learning and how we make choices to enrich ourselves and to grow and to develop and move forward. And really, by the more that you learn and the more that information that you attain about different things, you're able to, I think, live life more in a more rich manner. You're able to experience more. You're able to notice more. You're able to connect with more people. And I think that connection being driven through learning is such an important thing, and it's such a great way to live life.
Yeah, it is. And what they found is that, our capacity, for learning and growing is an essential piece for, flourishing and motivating us on a day-to-day basis. We become more creative. Our intellectual curiosity keeps us driven and moving, in our lives. So I think on some level we could all relate to, whether it was reading a book or seeing a particular movie or going to the theater or, just having a great conversation with someone who is just intellectually, curious or is interested in what you're saying or centered around that interest that you have. It creates more engagement and, just leads to places where, each of those individuals in that interaction can grow and flourish, and just create more fulfillment.
Yeah, definitely.
In their lives. So, and really what would be some of the reasons for continuing to learn, although there's not necessarily specific evidence, but we know that typically those people, and we can all probably on some level identify that person who is that lifelong learner, that love of learning, and they just, their demeanor, they appear, just more fulfilled and happier and just generally more positive. And those are the type of individuals that you're probably attracted to, right? You gravitate to them. So there are so many benefits, health benefits and, mental benefits, just relationships. So it impacts us in many, many positive ways.
And it kind of spurs out of curiosity too. Like when you're, when younger kids tend to be just so curious about everything that they can soak up. information that's given to them, and they have that creativity. But then it's just so easy to, as we get older, get complacent and get into our routines and then kind of lose our curiosity. And I think when that happens, then we start doing things that don't activate our minds and our brains. So we might start watching mindless television or play mindless video games, or you surf the web completely mindlessly and not really knowing what you're looking for. Whereas if you can kind of tap into your own curiosity and realize that you can use that to search for things more meaningfully, then you can get a more enriching, even leisure life where you're watching shows that have more meaning, and then you can have conversations with your spouse, your partner, your friends about it. That you can, if you're surfing the web, that you're surfing for news articles and keeping your mind active and learning, just staying in tune with what's going on in the world and critically thinking about it. Or reading newspapers and books. I don't think many people read newspapers or magazines anymore. It's kind of all like web searching. So I think if you go back to some of those basics, you get your mind more engaged, and the more that you get your mind engaged and you maintain your curiosity, the more that grows, and you want to learn more and you want to know more, and it gives you more enriching conversations with those people around you and can facilitate, again, the connection that is so important to just our daily human experience.
Yeah, agreed, Doc, that just the impact that it has just for personal growth, but again, resonating out to others, I think in some ways it allows us to move into these leadership roles, you know, becoming a role model for others and those that are around us as we generate this energy, as we generate this positivity, as we generate this curiosity. It becomes a mechanism for us to impact other people and other people's lives, to say, hey, it doesn't stop here. Right? We keep going. You know, there's it keeps us fresh. It keeps us engaged. It keeps us just moving forward. It enriches the quality of our life. And I think that we recognize, you know, time and time again, and you'll see these individuals who live, you know, 99, 100, 101, 2, 3, and you hear their stories, and there's this common thread. I mean, they don't stop learning. It continues throughout their entire lives. You know, they'll pick something up. They'll be learning something, you know, new. You know, I read an article recently, a woman who had turned 99. You know, she's, you know, learning to play a musical instrument at 99. Why? Because I want to. I'm interested. It's something that is going to enrich my life. And that does not stop. So, you know, this evening's guest, you know, as he shares his story, will certainly touch on those points. So this evening's guest, Dr. Barry Polanski, he is a dentist who is comprehensive cosmetic dentistry, restorative dentistry, and implant dentistry, for more than 40 years. He grew up in New York, attended Queens College, and then received his DMD degree from the University of Pennsylvania School of Dental Medicine. He's a lifelong learner, speaker, philosopher, leader in the dental industry, and has authored 4 books, including The Art of Examination, Art of Case Presentation, A Short Guide to a Long Career, and most recently, The Complete Dentist. In addition, he is the founder of the Academy of Dental Leadership, where he hosts a blog and provides training and support for dentists looking to build a successful and sustainable practice. Welcome, Doctor.
Good morning. Okay.
Dr. Polanski, how we doing?
I'm good, Jay. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I knew we were going to connect. It was destined.
Yeah. A few glitches there, but we're here.
Amen to that. So, you know, this evening's topic is focused on lifelong learning, and I prefaced and said that, you know, you and I had an opportunity to cross paths through the Flourishing Center in the certification of applied positive psychology, and that both of our number one strength were identified as lifelong learners. And it was no coincidence, I'm sure, that as a result of that you and I connected in some capacity there, and I also touched on the fact that as a result of a dialogue that you and I had over lunch, that had propelled me, to kind of put the wheels in motion and really ultimately leading to what is now AllPro Mindset. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's what I do, I guess.
Well, you the Academy of Leadership that you have and are founder of, I know that it's extremely important for you to impact the lives of dentists and move them into a role of leadership. So maybe you could, touch on that and really what prompted you to start the Academy of Leadership.
Okay, well, the Academy of Dental Leadership is basically the result of many years of doing other things that for example, it first started with turning my own life around. So, prior, even though the love of learning was probably with me my whole life, because it has been identified as a strength, I don't think I really became aware of it or utilized it in a way that led to good until I hit rock bottom in my own life. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. We walk around with certain strengths and that we can draw from, but unless we have a reason to even try to go there, we just walk through life asleep most of the time. Mm-hmm. So, the Academy of Dental Leadership was nothing that I began to think about until maybe the last 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. But my breakdown didn't occur maybe 30 years ago. So, if you look at it from that perspective, it wasn't as if I sat down one day and said, you know what, I think I'm going to design a website for dentists and promote leadership. That being said, I think there's a tremendous need for this, not only in dentistry. I mean, you're doing the same thing in a way. The Academy of Dental Leadership is just my expression, the concrete expression of a life of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a culmination, and built over time. So it was a process.
Yeah, I don't really like the word culmination.
How would you describe
it? Okay.
How would
just to stop?
Yeah.
Just to stop along the way. Stop along the way.
Yeah.
It's just part of your process. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, Michelangelo, who said, on his deathbed, is that I never stopped learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to the end. And you've written 4 books? And
excuse me?
You've written 4 books now, and the most recent that's coming out or is out is The Complete Dentist. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. It's not out yet. It's still in publication right now, and hopefully it's being printed as we speak, but probably come out in the fall. And what it's about is that I practiced dentistry for 44 years, and so I have this deep interest in positive psychology. Even before I had heard of positive psychology, I was actually studying the Greeks, Aristotle and the Stoics, Socrates, and when I started reading about positive psychology, I saw the similarities. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy, mm-hmm. Which is part of positive psychology, is really, I don't want to denigrate this, but it's really an offshoot of Stoic thinking. We're using the rational mind to interpret our thoughts. And so nothing new in the world, so to speak. Now, anyway, so the complete dentist is a blend of what I learned in dentistry and how to apply the principles of rational thought and positive psychology to the field of dentistry. But, you can do that with any field. It's not limited to dentistry. So the complete dentist is basically using Marty Seligman's model of PERMA V in dentistry.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, dentistry, to me, as a person who has had a long time fear of going to the dentist, holds a lot for, thinking about it. And I know there's a lot of people who are nervous about going to the dentist. So, and I have found my experiences with some of the best dentists are ones who can speak to me as a person and not just come in and assess what's going on with my teeth and then move on with their day. A lot of doctors you can go to and they will just kind of check out your ailments or check your, physical health and then move on. But I think that dentistry really has a huge psychological component, because I know there's a lot of people who are like me, who are just nervous and afraid, and they need that comfort. So, do you see that? Does your book kind of speak to that?
Yeah, of course. Well, there's a concept that we speak about in positive psychology called brain biases. Mm-hmm. And one of the first cognitive biases that human beings have is a negative bias. And there's evolutionary reasons for having a negative bias. It's what has enabled us to survive all of these years. We can sense danger immediately, and that's good for our survival. So negative bias in dentistry is very high. Okay. Mm-hmm. You just spoke to it just now. Right. Okay. So a dental practice is naturally going to have a negative bias to it, and it's only enhanced by the feelings of patients who come to us every day. So that's one of the things that we have to do in our careers is to overcome the negative bias. Mm-hmm. And then, so I speak to that in the book. I also speak to the fact that of the concept of what I learned from Dr. James Polanski from Penn. And Polanski talks about whether you're going to wear a red cape or a green cape. Mm-hmm. And by the red cape would be a dentist or anybody really who sees their role in life is to be putting out fires, looking for ailments, as the word you use is ailments. And that's what we do all day, and that's how we spend our days. But, that doesn't really do anything to correct the negative bias that exists. So you can wear a green cape as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the green cape, it changes your whole perspective about how you come to your job every day. Rather than looking for bad things or problems mm-hmm. to solve, you're looking to build people, whether it's your staff members or your patients. I know you're looking at it from the perspective of the patient. Most people do. But, a dentist is running a business, and he's got to deal with many people besides patients, mm-hmm. although the patients is the main focus. But, just like in any other job, no matter what you do, and here we go, you have to work with people. Mm-hmm. And so if we see our role in working with people and looking for the good in people and looking to build people and grow people, I like the word grow people because grow, the next step from growth is flourishing. Mm-hmm. And that's a big word. That's a big word in life and in business. So, so the book speaks to a lot of these issues. Those are just two: the negative bias, brain biases, and the green cape, red cape concept that Polanski talks about. Mm.
Yeah, in the mental health industry, the focus for 50, 60 years was really on the disease-oriented model, and Dr. Seligman, recognized that and came in, and we know that, it stemmed from a conversation that he had with his 5-year-old daughter, and, that kind of ignited a fire within him and said, you know what, let's shift perspective. Let's do a 180 here and really focus in on people's strengths, the things that build them, that grow them, that lead to flourishing. Mm-hmm. And I think you're speaking to that, and it would make sense how, the appeal of positive psychology would be such a draw to you, and just applying that principle in the dental industry. And now you're in a position to lead others down the road. I mean, you have an incredible amount of experience, and in having the opportunity to shape these, either dentists that have been in the industry for a period of time, or kind of new and emerging dentists coming out. So the ability to kind of be in a leadership role and to move them in a direction is, I don't want to say an enormous responsibility, but you can pass that along, and it's not necessarily a passing of the torch, but now I'm in a position to really impact the lives of these dentists out in dental practice, and building a sustainable and successful practice, and really kind of channeling them into the green cape, right? Mm-hmm. Wearing the green cape.
Well, I think it's a little bit more difficult than that, and let me explain why. Okay. I can't say to you, a doctor, let's go to the closet here. I want you to pick a green cape and a red cape, and explain everything to him, and tell him philosophically or psychologically why that is the better cape, or let him or her decide that is the better cape. That's the one I want to wear. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that they're going to grab the green cape and they're going to live the green cape. Okay, there's a big difference. And you brought up Seligman's Rose Garden story. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a man who was practicing psychology for years, and it wasn't until mid to late in his own career that he got a wake-up call from his own daughter that, hey, buddy, you're not living this stuff, are you? You're talking about it a lot, but you're not living it. So the real difficulty for everybody, not just dentists, is to, how do I bring this, and I'm going to use the word philosophy and psychology interchangeably, because it wasn't until the late 19th century that we even understood what psychology was. Prior to that, it was all philosophy. Okay, mm-hmm. How do you make philosophy come alive? How do you live it? And and then you've got to go back to the Greeks again. And the Stoics will be the first ones who'll tell you that philosophy is worthless if you're just going to sit around and gaze at your navel all day long and just lecture people about what they should do. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's really about living it. It's really about practicing it. And how do you do that? Now that's the hard part, Jay. That's really the hard part. Because we can sit and talk about it over coffee, but it's so. I don't know which of the philosophers said, that philosophy isn't about talking or lecturing, or it's more about actually living it. It's like sweeping your floor every day, every single day. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't sweep your floor every day, the dust is going to accumulate. And so even people who are as well educated as Marty Seligman, he got that message. And I got that message too. And so teaching that message, how to apply this knowledge. Mm-hmm. Now that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, the application is everything. Mm-hmm. It's how do you move people from thinking to mm-hmm. doing? How do you create that transition? And that is the challenge that we face. Mm-hmm. Particularly people who are out, trying to impact the world, be change agents, and do these things that are potentially changing the lives of others and impacting them in a way that does affect their ability to kind of grow and hopefully eventually flourish. So are you addressing that in the book, the Complete Dentist? Or is that where your focus is, and trying to get them to move from, that place of philosophy to really action? Is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah, because well, two things. Number one, and I'm gonna invoke Michelangelo again. I'm still learning as well. Okay, and I think that's what's really important. I think the message is, that as long as I'm alive, then I'm going to continue to learn how to live. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important message, that it doesn't end. So I addressed that in the book, but somewhere along the line, I realized that the best way to teach, if you go back into antiquity, you realize, they killed Socrates, or actually Socrates killed himself because he was handed the hemlock and he actually took it himself. But, why did they kill this great teacher? Because he was teaching people how to live, and they didn't like that, okay? They didn't like, who are you to teach us how to live? Okay, right. And I think a better example. I think a better example would be somebody like, say, Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, who understood that, yes, he had all of this knowledge and he wrote it down and he did it for his own good and to help other people, but he lived the life of an emperor. He lived it every day, and that was the key. And I think the greater message than writing any book or giving any lecture is to wake up every day and actually practice your philosophy.
And it is a practice. I think, and we were, kind of speaking to that, but even before we got you on the phone, is that you have to model it, you have to try it, and you have to be mindful of what it is you're doing, what it is you're saying to other people, and think about, how am I living that in my own life every single day? And it takes practice, because it's not always easy. Sometimes it's easier just to kind of go with the flow, or let other people make decisions for you, or just kind of follow the mold. But really, if you stop and you think about what you're doing and you think about why you're doing it, we've talked a lot about the why and why we do things, and then make it an intentional practice every day to think, to learn, to look around, to experience, to interact, to gain more so that you can do more. It is a daily practice.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, and I didn't talk about this or maybe I did in one of my other books, but it's this whole idea, because dentists are, we call it the practice of dentistry, or we have a dental practice. And, through the years, dentists have come up to me and said, I don't get it. What's this word practice mean? I don't need to practice. I'm good at it. I'm a very good dentist. And, right then and there, I know that they never really understood the concept of practice. And, a very good book was written a few years ago called, I think it's called Peak Performance, or Peak, by K. Anders Ericsson, who makes the distinction between practice and deliberate practice, and conscious practice, and actually thinking about what you're doing at every moment. And so therein lies one of the differences, and therein lies the application of taking these principles off the page and into your life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the intentionality behind it.
Yes,
there's a motivation, and a driving force behind where I think it requires us to reflect, to be self-aware, of who we are and where we're at and what we're doing and where we're going, mm-hmm. and then to identify the steps to get there, and that, I think it takes an incredible amount of self-awareness to truly assess where I'm at, and then once I gather that information and say, okay, I'm looking at myself, and it might require me to go outside of myself. And what I mean by that is getting the perspective of other people, because, we have blind spots, and I think it's important to be able to gather information from the outside as well, to enhance that understanding of, who we are and where we're at, and that can contribute in the long term of the direction that we're moving, in our lives. And one thing that's coming to mind is accountability. And I think with the Academy of Dental Leadership, it puts you in a position to hold people accountable, because I do think that it is extremely difficult for a number of different reasons as to why people understand the philosophy, they get it, intellectually, but it's that movement, that transition, that change to the application of that knowledge, and the accountability piece. I think I think it's fuel. It's puts people, helps them to transition to that movement there. And so is that really the idea behind it? With the Academy of Dental Leadership. Well, yes and no. I mean, at a personal level, I can't hold people accountable. I have no control over other people's thoughts or behaviors. A person can only change from within themselves if they want to. I do believe that there are a lot of people who want to change, and for that, the tools are there. And so that's what the Academy of Dental Leadership is about. So I'm guessing they have this opportunity to participate, right? To become a member, to go through the program. So the design is, okay, well, here are tools for you to use, right? And apply to your own life. I mean, is it walking them through the steps, or is it, what's, I guess, the process? I'm in dental practice. I want to make some changes. And, I come to, your academy. What's happening? Yeah. And so, the theme this morning is talk about love of learning. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And so another character strength that we learn about in positive psychology is the character strength of perspective. Mm-hmm. And so what the Academy of Dental Leadership does is provides insights and tries to open the eyes of dentists into taking different perspectives. I think that's where a lot of dental education and education falls short. Mm-hmm. Whereas they don't give enough perspective and meaning to what they're teaching and why they're teaching it. So I try to provide that. The whole idea is, okay, we're going to talk about the theory behind this and the interconnections between what we're doing and what it means to your life, to your actual life, and the lives of the people who you affect every day. Mm-hmm. And even what that means, okay? And so we keep delving into the meaning of things. And, when you keep delving into the meaning of things, for me anyway, two words kept popping up in terms of flourishing. And that was that this is what leaders do. This is why leadership is important, because they continue to distill these ideas down and to pull the meaning out for not only themselves, but to anybody who wants to jump onto their train. Mm-hmm. The other word that keeps coming up for me is the idea of communication, because even though leaders may come up with all of these thoughts, the real issue is how do we express those thoughts? How do we get them and communicate them in order to have any kind of influence on people and on ourselves? And that goes back to what do we do at the Academy of Dental Leadership? Is that, once again, I don't have any control over anybody's motivation, but I do have a little influence. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference between control and influence. Sure. Mm-hmm. And so by being who I am and by explaining things in a different way, I can apply some influence to people, and hopefully that increases my leadership role.
and therefore increases their leadership role, and hence the world goes round and round.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked a lot about when people understand the why of what they're doing, they're able to do it better, and they know what they're striving for, and they have a better sense to kind of move forward. And that sounds like what you're explaining when you kind of delve into the meaning for each step and why you're doing it, and kind of helping people become better leaders so that they really understand the meaning behind the work that's being done. It takes the technicality out of it and puts the humanity into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's and really, it really all comes down to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the themes that I always have worked with is the human side of dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
And dentistry is such a technical field, and it attracts mostly technophiles,
mm-hmm.
people who believe that if they learn their craft, they can conquer the world. And the complete dentist is someone who understands the importance of the paradox, the both sides, the human side and the technical side of dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about even just the what you're working with, a person's smile, a person's teeth, a person's mouth, like when a person walks into a room, you most certainly notice their face and their smile. I mean, a person's teeth and their mouth is one of the key physical presentations that you notice about a person. So I think for each individual, even, whether you're conscious of it or not, like that is so important to you. It is such an important part of who you are. And here you are that could be part of the fear in it. Here you are going to a dentist who's going to be working on that very important part of you. And it's also your communication center. It's how you communicate with others. So it puts the patient in such a vulnerable position to be allowing this other person in to this vulnerable part of their body. So not only, I think, do patients worry about the physical, like pain, like, is this going to hurt? But also that subconscious vulnerability of, I am letting you into my physical representation of myself when I go into a room, or you're going into my communication center. And I think that being a dentist, you kind of need to know that you're working with a person, you're working with a vulnerable part of that person, and you're really kind of opening them up to just so much more than just physical teeth. I mean, there's so much more there. And I think it's really important that the work that you're doing, that you're sharing that with the dentist, especially if they are, a lot of people tend to be more technically minded and they're not thinking about all that the mouth represents to somebody else, that there are so many different layers to it. So I think this is a great piece of education that they might not be getting in the school. I don't know what the dental programs look like, but they might not be getting that psychological component. So I think that that's great that they have this other option to kind of look into and consider and think about these other pieces. Well,
dentistry's changed over the last, I've only been a part of it for like the last 45 years, but it's been around for about 150 years, modern dentistry anyway. And, what people think about dentistry has changed. The role the dentist plays has changed over the last 150 years, and definitely over the last 50 years. Even the way you just expressed it just now about the smile, there's a lot of assumptions being made there about a smile and what it does, and that this is what's being force-fed in dental schools today. This is what's being force-fed by the media today, that the smile is all that matters, but it's only one component of what matters when it comes to health and oral health and general health. Not everybody comes in to have a beautiful smile. To some people, they could care less about what their smile looks like. But how do we get to know that? How do we get to know who this person is? Right. So I'm more concerned about the person than I am about their smile, and I really want to know about what their beliefs are about health, what their beliefs are about cosmetics, what their beliefs are about anything, and the obstacles that stand in their way, because there's so much fear involved a lot of times. And if we can't even get through that, we're never going to get to the other things.
Right.
But let me give you an example of that. About 5 years ago, I had a man who came in to the practice, and because of the way I do my examination, I got to know him very well, and so he owned a bar in town, and he saw a lot of people, and so you can make the assumption that he was that he wanted to have a better smile so that because he's in public all the time. That's an assumption. But when I got to know him, he kept saying the same thing over and over and over again. He said, "Doc, I just want to eat a steak again. I just want to eat a steak." That's it. But I'm going to tell you, a lot of dentists would have missed that. A lot of dentists would have been forcing the smile on him, you see? But the bottom line was we became fast friends. We got to know each other fairly well. And we restored his home out, soup to nuts. I mean, he got the best of dentistry. Okay, so I got to do some really good dentistry on him, and he got the benefits of the dentistry. He got to eat his steak, and he also smiled. Okay, which was important. And I got to know him, and he comes in every 4 months. And he never talks about the smile. He only talks about the steak. And when I show his slides. When I show his slides to audiences, they look at the smile, they look at the teeth, they look at the dentistry, but they never see that person. And I know him very well. Anyway, he died 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
And I hear that.
Well, no, I understand that, but I relive this case a lot. Matter of fact, I'm giving a presentation in South Carolina in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to relive it again and say at the end of it, you talk about purpose and meaning, Jay. You know what that means, right? In your own life.
Yeah.
That I was glad I became a part of this guy's life for 5 years. And really, that story tells me a lot about my life. It tells me a lot about dentistry. It tells me about a lot of things. But it tells me about the way outsiders look at every profession. Okay? But really, it comes down to human relationships. It comes down to connection. It comes down to getting to know people. That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. This has been really insightful and helpful. So we really appreciate speaking with you. You've given us so much to think about.
Yeah, Doc.
Well, it was great. It was great. It was enlightening for me because every time I speak, I learn something new too.
Yeah, that's the I guess the power of just the relationship, right? The connection. There's a takeaway. There is not a moment or an episode where I don't walk away and say, wow, I'm gaining insight and knowledge every time. So we were incredibly grateful that you were able to take, time out of your day to share, your thoughts and your insights and your wisdom. Very, very wise man. And we are truly grateful for that. So you are doing tremendous work, in the profession and just the world in general. So, we're grateful for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So listeners, we're going to take a short break and then we will be right back to reflect on this interview. Listeners, welcome back. You are listening to AllPro Mindset. And we just had a wonderful conversation with dentist Dr. Polanski, who practices in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And we were talking about the different aspects, the complete dentistry. He wrote a couple of books and has a leadership academy for dentists. And some of the final thoughts that we were talking about was that really how he has incorporated positive psychology into the world of dentistry and how it really can be incorporated into any profession. He said that, it all comes down to really humanity and connections and meaning. And a lot of the themes that we've talked about in previous episodes were absolutely covered again today. That he talked about, when you're working with new dentists, you have to delve into the meaning behind what you're doing and the why behind your doing. And Coach talked to us a little bit about, he mentioned influences versus control.
Yeah, sure, Doc. He touched on that, and to me, there's an element. Control feels. It's not necessarily manipulation, but you are taking away the ability to choose freely. I mean, we've talked about passion before, and how someone has to come to that point where they feel that they're freely choosing their path and their direction. And if it's control, versus influence. So influence is, hey, in the communication process, I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I'm open to what you're saying, and I'm going to consider what you're saying. And then I can come to a point where I have the ability to choose the direction that I want to go and that I want to move. Whereas if I feel like I'm being controlled or manipulated or somehow constricted, that doesn't give us that space and that freedom, and I think inhibits us, whether it's conscious or unconscious.
Right.
That we don't have the ability to move. So I think it's very subtle in how we do it and how we communicate. And he talked about communication and influencing others. And one idea that he did speak to, he said, distilling ideas down to a point where you get other people to kind of jump on the train. So that process, I think, is an art in the ability to do that.
Yeah, I mean, to go on a little bit of a tangent, in a previous episode, we spoke to Jason Sargis, and he is a coach for MMA fighters, and he was saying in that the best fighters are those who can really take the feedback and be able to use it to move forward. And I think this absolutely speaks to influences versus controlling, both on both sides, when you're both the coach mentor and when you're the mentee, and the person moving forward. You have to, I think, as a coach, be accepting of the fact that the extent of your influence is just that. It's influence. You can't control the person that you're trying to impart knowledge to. And on the part of the mentee, you have to really be open and vulnerable to letting other people influence you. You have to be open to the idea that you don't hold all of the answers and that maybe someone has information that's going to help move you forward. And I remember that that's what Coach Sargis had said, is that the people who can take that information and move forward achieve a higher level than those who can't, So it's just allowing yourself to be open to that influence and recognizing they're not controlling you. You're making a choice, but you're opening yourself up to the idea that someone else could have knowledge that you don't have, and that might be beneficial to you.
Right, Doc. And in some capacity, you have to be vulnerable. Right? That vulnerability is this kind of willingness to be open and accepting and to others' thoughts and ideas about anything that is being communicated to us. And that could, also be tied into that kind of survival piece. It's like, hey, what's the motivation here? And I think on some level, if we as human beings, when we're gathering and gaining information about anything, there's always this kind of alert center in our brain to say, well, what is the motivation behind this? and where is this going to lead me, potentially. So it's like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but it's not giving me that ability to, I don't know, make a decision for myself or to choose. And we had a dialogue, even on our ride in and talking about this and a particular youth that I'm working with. And I just think that when we don't have that space to feel like we're choosing something freely, that we were being impacted or controlled in a way like, hey, I'm going to force this thought. You're going to believe what I believe and see what I want to see, and that is it. And when you don't have that option or that choice, I think it puts up a wall and really doesn't allow communication to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I was just the other day was looking at a TED Talk by Brene Brown about vulnerability, and she talks a lot about it. She has a book out, Daring Greatly, How the Courage to Be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. And it really does seem to be the key to progress, is to being vulnerable, being open, allowing others to influence you. And it sounds like Dr. Polanski is really tapping in on that, and he's recognizing that, and he's sharing that with the dentist that he works with. And I think that that's a lesson for all of us, is both as leaders to be vulnerable, to input to others, to always be willing to learn, because you can't lead without learning, because information is constantly changing, but also as a person who, as a student of life, as a student of any career or profession, that you have to be vulnerable to the influence of others. So it's on both sides of that coin.
Yeah, I agree, Doc. And I know that was touched on very specifically with a guest we had on prior, Joe Mitch, who had talked about his addiction, and that when he moved into a space of vulnerability, that's where the change happened.
Yeah.
And that was it, and he addressed that very, very specifically. So, there's not this sense of control or these outside influence. And I know that he had spoken about just these social forces and pleasing others and feeling like almost trapped in a way, that when he let himself go, that's where the change or the potential for change was he was able to make in his life, in his own life.
Yeah. So listeners, thank you so much for being with us for this show. There is just so much to think about as you move forward through your day, and maybe you can consider ways that you can be more open, more vulnerable to listening to others and decide what message they're giving you, and are there different paths that you should be taking based on that, or maybe there's not, but just being open to the vulnerability and the possibilities. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, listeners, for tuning in this evening, and get out there and live your lives all in.
You'll be a dentist. You have a talent for causing things. Son, be a dentist. People will pay you to be inhumane. Your temperament's wrong for the priesthood, and teaching would suit you still. Son, be a dentist. You'll be a success.